Welcome back to 1834, chess friends. Le Bourdonnais is winning 5 games to 3 and he only needs to win 1 more to take this third match, whereas McDonnell needs to win 3 in a row. He won the last game, so maybe he can build on that. We have Baldric up there commentating. Let's begin. We have e4, e5 from Le Bourdonnais, and now straight away McDonnell goes for the King's Gambit with f4. Now everybody knows that a gentleman must accept a gambit, and Le Bourdonnais accepts. Good job, Le Bourdonnais. Knight to f3 and now g5, bishop to c4 and bishop to g7, and d4 from McDonnell, and he's probably hoping that Le Bourdonnais will push his pawn so that McDonnell can gambit away his knight again, but he doesn't give him the pleasure this time. He goes for d6 instead. c3 now from McDonnell, and last time Le Bourdonnais here played knight to c6, but he goes for something different this time. Instead he pushes h6, so getting these pawns on the king's side moving. Knight to a3, and now knight to c6, and McDonnell develops his dark square bishop to d2. We have queen to e7, and then McDonnell castles. Now here, Baldric, with his head as empty as a eunuch's underpants, suggests capturing the pawn in the centre with the queen, but if you're doing that, then the rook is just going to come across to pin the queen against the king, and you're losing your queen. So thanks, but no thanks, Mr. Baldric. Instead, Le Bourdonnais played bishop to d7, clearing space for castling on the queen side. And in fact, McDonnell anticipates this and gets his pawns rolling with b4, obviously starting a pawn storm on the queen side. However, Le Bourdonnais castles on the queen side anyway. Now, as I mentioned, when players castle on opposite sides like this, you do expect the pawns to be pushed on both sides of the board, and you're in for a very sharp game. It looks like Le Bourdonnais has already got a head start on his push on this side, but maybe McDonnell has more power in the centre here. Now McDonnell notices that his centre pawn here is under attack from the queen, so he brings his bishop back to defend, whilst also clearing the way for the c-pawn to head up the board, so nice job. But Le Bourdonnais is ahead of the game. He brings his pawn down to g4 and attacks the knight, and it's a bit late for McDonnell to think about gambiting it right now, so he backs it off to e1. Le Bourdonnais continues pushing with f3 and McDonnell captures it with his g-pawn. Now here, Baldric suggests capturing back with the black pawn, and that's actually fine. Baldric, you have permission to write home immediately. However, Le Bourdonnais didn't play this. Instead, he played knight f6, developing the undeveloped knight. And McDonnell pushes his b-pawn and attacks the black knight on the other side of the board, so that backs off to b8 next to the king. Knight on a to c2, again getting out of the way of the pawns. This one's going to be headed up the board just as soon as McDonnell gives the order to go over the top. Meanwhile, Le Bourdonnais brings his d-rook over to be placed directly in front of the king, looking extremely mean. So McDonnell gets out of the way, but Le Bourdonnais continues pushing his pawns, h5. McDonnell brings his c knight up to e3, heading towards the centre with some nice range here, and Le Bourdonnais captures the f-pawn finally, so the queen captures back. Bishop to g4, attacking the queen, so the queen advances to f4, and Le Bourdonnais takes the opportunity to get his knight out of the corner to d7. McDonnell advances his knight to f5 and attacks the black queen, so it's the black queen's turn to advance to e6, and McDonnell continues with knight to f3, and now the black bishop here has the opportunity of choosing between which knight he wants to grab. It's probably better to choose the knight on f5, because after the pawn captures back, it's going to break up McDonnell's centre a little bit, which will be good for Le Bourdonnais. But Le Bourdonnais decides to choose the other knight instead, and the queen captures back, and now Le Bourdonnais's pieces are looking rather cramped. He doesn't have much of an attack on anymore. He's lost this g-pawn. Le Bourdonnais plays his knight to g4, and McDonnell grabs his helmet and orders the boys over the top. Let's go, a4. Le Bourdonnais tries to slow him down with bishop to h6, but McDonnell just grabs it here, and we have a bishop exchange. This knight goes backwards to pick it up, and McDonnell keeps pushing the pawns, a5. The knight captures the knight on f5, the pawn captures back, which attacks the queen, so the queen infiltrates behind the storming pawns. But McDonnell doesn't care, he's on a mission, he keeps pushing, a6. Now, Baldric, with his face that makes onions cry, suggests capturing the pawn here, but if you were to do that, the white queen is coming into b7 and checking, and it's going to be very nasty for Le Bourdonnais, so don't do that. Instead, he brings his pawn up to d5 and blocks the queen's path through to the b7 square. And in response, McDonnell pushes c4. He just keeps going. Now, Le Bourdonnais is not going to capture the pawn with the queen here because the bishop's protecting it, and he's not going to capture the bishop because the white queen's defending the bishop, and he's not going to capture the pawn with the pawn because this would reveal the path to the b7 square again. So what does he do? Well, he decides to bring his knight up to f6 to try to help out with something. But again, McDonnell on his mission doesn't care. He just captures the b7 pawn, which comes with check. And Le Bourdonnais doesn't capture it back with the king because he thinks this will expose him too much, so he hides behind the fully advanced pawn here. And yes, McDonnell keeps going with this pawn storm. He pushes c5, and now this pawn's defended by the central pawn and the bishop's defending the b pawn. What does Le Bourdonnais do? Well, he tries to get his knight further into the game, trying to do something, anything. He goes to g4, headed towards the white king. Maybe he's coming to the f2 square here. Again, McDonnell just ignores it. He pushes b6. He keeps going. Le Bourdonnais captures this pawn, and instead of capturing back, McDonnell pushes the c pawn to c6. Now let's analyse the position a little bit. McDonnell's actually threatening a brutal checkmate on the back rank with his rook. Yeah, just crushing the back rank here. There's nothing that Le Bourdonnais can do once it gets there. What can he do to stop it getting there? Well, not very much. He can maybe check with the knight here, but after the queen captures it, what can he do now? Well, he can deliver another check and he'll lose that rook as well. He can block the rook coming in with the queen, and now he's losing the queen as well. What's he got left? Absolutely nothing. He's just going to have to play a useless move like h4, and then he's getting checkmated. So very nice. So let's go back to the position in question here. It was at this point that Le Bourdonnais realised the gig was up and he resigned the game. So very well done to McDonnell. I very much enjoyed his pawn storms today. McDonnell has now climbed all the way back from being 5-2 down to being only 5-4 down. So join me again next time to see if he can level the match out or whether Le Bourdonnais will manage to finally cross the finish line. Oh, and if you're enjoying this series, please consider liking and subscribing. Thank you. I'll see you again next time.